Well, voting has ended in widely discredited referendums organised by Russia in 4 occupied regions in Ukraine. As expected, Russia is claiming that an overwhelming majority of residents are in favour of joining Russia, but not all the votes have yet been counted. Ukraine and the West have condemned the 5-day vote as a sham and an attempted land grab by Moscow. Well, Russia's president claims he just wants to help people living there. Nearly 4 million people from the eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk and the southern regions of Kherson and Zaporizhia were to attend polling stations and vote. Well, the areas in question represent 15% of Ukraine's territory. That's roughly the size of Portugal. But how many of these votes were given freely is in dispute, as the BBC's Hugo Bachega explains.
We've heard reports, though, from residents, accounts from people on the ground saying that soldiers are going door to door, forcing people to vote. Ukrainian officials are saying that in some towns, residents have been banned from leaving. Some workers have been threatened with losing their jobs if they do not join this process. So it seems that people are being forced to take part in this so-called referendum.
So could the results be legitimate? Here's our World Affairs editor, John Simpson.
Kherson, which is probably contains the greatest number of people that don't want to have anything to do with Russia, is supposedly voted 97% in favour of moving into Russia, going into Russia. Zaporizhia, 98%. Donetsk, 98%. Luhansk, 98%. I mean, these are ludicrous.
Well, the UK's Ministry of Defence has said Vladimir Putin could announce the annexation of occupied regions of Ukraine when he addresses Russia's parliament as early as Friday. We heard earlier that Putin has justified the votes as helping people living in these territories who consider themselves Russian. But there is another school of thought as to his motivation, as one of Ukraine's former prime ministers explains.
Ukraine launched a number of counteroffensives, and Putin failed at the battlefield. So now he wants actually to secure this area in order to commit another war crime and to commit another international crime against the sovereign Ukraine.
Well, Ukraine has said any of its citizens who've helped with Russia's self-styled referendums will face treason charges and at least 5 years in jail. It's accused Uruguay, Belarus, Syria, Egypt, Brazil, Venezuela, Togo and South Africa of unlawfully seeking to legitimise the votes. Uruguay has denied this, with the Foreign Ministry tweeting that it does not back actions of any kind aimed at legitimising the occupation through use of force of part of Ukrainian territory. Well, here's the country's foreign minister speaking on Monday.
Nuestro país lo ha condenado en los términos más firmes.
Our country has condemned it in the strongest terms as a clear violation of the principles on which we have built this organisation and which must be respected by all its members. It is imperative that the Russian Federation cease hostilities and withdraw as soon as possible from Ukrainian territory.
Well, the EU says it will impose sanctions on any organisers of the so-called referendums. Meanwhile, the UN has also expressed concerns about reports from Russia of nearly 2,400 protesters being arrested since President Putin's order to partially mobilise troops for the war in Ukraine last Wednesday.
We call for the immediate release of all those arbitrarily detained and for the authorities to abide by their international obligations to respect and ensure the rights to freedom of expression and of peaceful assembly.
The Kremlin said last week that 300,000 Russians would be summoned, with priority given to those with military experience. However, Vladimir Putin admitted on Monday that there had been errors in who was being called up, with reports of elderly people and those with disabilities receiving a summons. Across Russia, there have been a spate of attacks on enlistment offices. More than a dozen have been set on fire. However, there are also those who support the sign-up, as the BBC's Steve Rosenberg found out when he visited a military conscription office.
I'm in the mood to fight, says Dmitry, an HR manager. Since we've been drafted, we have to serve. This mother says the lads will run about a bit there. They'll lose a bit of weight. It'll be fine.
Well, Russia says it has not asked for the extradition of thousands of Russian citizens who've rushed into neighbouring countries following the call-up of extra soldiers to fight in Ukraine. Places such as Belarus and Uzbekistan have reported a surge in the number of those crossing their borders. Finnish authorities said almost 17,000 Russians crossed the border into Finland last weekend alone. That's an 80% rise from a week earlier. Well, these satellite images show long vehicle queues on Russia's borders with Georgia and Mongolia. The BBC's Rehan Dimitri is at the upper Larsi border, crossing from Russia into Georgia, and sent us this report.
There's a flow of people coming across. Some are on their bikes, many are crossing the border by foot, some are in their cars, people are dragging their suitcases behind. All of them are looking exhausted, hungry, but also relieved to be here. This is the point of safety for them. Many people told me that it took them days to cross the border, and there are many thousand more people on the Russian